Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for tuning into Fuck Up Night presented by WUSA. My name is Renee. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a student right here at Waterloo Renison College for social work. When it's not the pandemic, I'm also a stand-up comic, just like my friend and co-host Ben here.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ben. I use he, him pronouns. I also go to University of Waterloo. I'm a warrior, just like you guys. And I'm excited to be doing fuck up nights with you guys tonight.
Yeah, awesome. Before we get started with some awesome speakers, we just want to explain a little bit about, why we're all here. So WUSA wanted to partner with Fuck Up Nights KW because they saw value in people openly talking about their failures. So Ben and I know it, as students, we are under so much pressure to succeed all the time, but the reality is that is not how life works. And it's important to shine light on the fuck ups along the way. And we're going to learn the lessons that come along with them, right? So fuck up nights began with a group of business people having a few drinks in a bar in Mexico City. There was lots of ego and bravado as everyone started talking about their successes. But as the group drank some more, the truth and honesty sort of started to flow. Everyone started to share stories about their struggles, including stress, financials, and the mistakes they were making. And the result was a night of honesty and vulnerability. Everybody agreed that it was therapeutic and it was kind of a gift. So they convened again and they discussed the value of sharing your truth and that more people should experience this. And that is how Fuck Up Night was born. So Fuck Up Nights is a global movement that has taken place in over 321 cities in over 90 countries all around the world. And they believe in living a life with less filters and that having difficult conversations is a positive step towards well-being in a less ego-driven world.
Well said, Renee. So tonight we're doing a fuck up night. We have three incredible speakers here to share their fuck ups with you. And after each speaker, you guys watching will have a chance to ask them some questions. So if you want to throw your questions in the comment section of the live stream, we will ask them along. Also, we'll be sharing some student fuck ups. So if you have your own fuck ups that you want to share, we have some that you were submitted in advance. But if you want to share yours in the comments, now or whenever through the show would be a great time to do that. We also have a winning fuck up that we'll announce at the end that will win some good prizes from WUSA. Please remember that over the night, we're sharing stories of failure so that the audience can learn from them. So please respect everyone's courage for sharing and try and get everything you can out of it. So now I am excited to introduce our first speaker of the night. Our first speaker, his name is Craig Haney. He is the Director of Business Development at Apply Board. And he spent the last 2 decades bringing new technology products to the market, innovating and collaborating with some of the biggest companies in the country, including building the first innovation lab at Canadian Tire. He's worked with a large number of startups to help deploy their products in large companies and creating a clear adoption and commercialization for those products. So without further ado, here we go with Craig Haney.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here from afar, from my basement. And as Ben said, my name is Craig Haney. I am a graduate of UW, the MBET program, as of, 2008, I guess, 2007, 2008, version 5 is how I think about it. They don't do that anymore, but, and I'm a Waterloo guy, so I hang out here a lot. And I'm really excited to be able to share my fuck ups with you. I've got many, but I picked one in particular. So I'm going to just share my screen here so if I can figure this out. And away we go. All right. There we go. So that's a picture of me. I had the opportunity to be a bit of a poster child one time where UW and the MBET program happened to plaster my face around subways and billboards and stuff in Toronto. And maybe one of the ones I didn't have as part of this was one of my good friends from Canadian Tire shared a picture of someone passed out drunk in front of me on the subway and in front of my picture. And I thought that was a pretty apropos way of using my mugshot on the subway. Anyways, also right now, currently business development of Plyboard. Plyboard, one of Canada's fastest growing companies. Last year we were number 1. This year we were number 2. And my job is to kind of help bring new revenue and new business models to market. And it's really what I've done for the majority of my career is figure out how to bring new things to life, and mostly inside organizations instead of on my own. I'll start a little bit here about kind of the one thing I haven't fucked up. These are my 3 lovely children. And I always want to start with that just because it does help me remind me that I'm not a total fuck up, that I've figured this out a little bit. At least so far. We're about 11 years in on the middle one and 8 years for the twins on either side. So, all right. Let me tell you. So I'm gonna share my story today about Canadian Tire. And Canadian Tire at that time, so this was 2012, I joined. This is a picture of Communitech, obviously older because you can see BlackBerry in the background. And this is downtown Kitchener in Communitech. And I was hired by the CTO of Canadian Tire to kind of build out an innovation lab. And the job was to sort of put Canada's largest retailer at that time, a $16 billion company, inside the most dense ecosystem in Canada, and one of the most productive. And I was trying to figure out how to take a big old stodgy retailer and try to make it cool and relevant to this community and learn from this community. I'd never done that before. Thankfully, no one else had either. So all of my fuck ups were before anyone was looking, so that by the time that people actually got around to looking, I looked like I kind of knew what I was doing. But I'm going to share a little bit of this. So let me give you a little context about kind of what Canadian Tire innovation was at this time. So once again, this is 2012, 2013. No one had ever really figured out or understood why Canadian Tire was here. So I took this job as director of innovation for Canadian Tire. Once again, if you knew Canadian Tire, they were green screens, and this was an iconic Canadian company for a person who grew up in Canada, in Southern Ontario. I remember my dad taking me to Canadian Tire and buying stuff, and it looked the same 35 years ago than it did when I started. So I had no idea what this job was. I was given very little direction, but a ton of support by my CTO. And I had to figure out how to connect this big old Canadian company to the startups and try to kind of be the front door to this pretty interesting opportunity. So I sat my butt in Communitech in downtown, and I was by myself for the first 6 months. I had no staff. I had no real mandate other than to kind of figure it out, ask questions, and figure out what was happening sort of inside Canadian Tire and what the opportunities were. And then what the fuck is innovation for retail? So this is pre-Shopify. So I remember, and you're going to have a Shopify speaker later. So this was, Shopify had no presence in Waterloo. Shopify was a very small company at that time. And I remember Lauren Paddleford coming to me probably 2014 or 2015, asking if Shopify wanted to, or if Canadian Tire wanted to work with Shopify. I thought it was a great opportunity, and I did a terrible job of selling it inside the organization. It was unfortunate because I remember that Lauren had come up to us and said, "Hey, we could really support you on your Black Friday deals and help you with all that extra sort of traffic over the holidays." And I took that to my CTO and I said, "This seems really smart that we don't have to build server and infrastructure forever just to manage this sort of few weeks." They said, no, Shopify was a little tiny company that weren't able to handle our infrastructure, and we were building a big data center ourselves. And sure enough, that late November, Black Friday, our servers went down and Shopify was well going. And Lauren texted me saying, "See, I told you." So, but no one really knew what innovation was at that time for retail. Retail was still bricks and mortar, still on e-commerce was Amazon, and they bricks and mortar stores hadn't figured out how to do that. And so it was really a challenge to kind of figure out how to answer that story of what the hell was Canadian Tire doing inside this Communitech, inside this innovation or this startup ecosystem. And then how the fuck do I get anything done around here? Like this was so I was used to working in small companies and startups, and if you stood up, you could see the entire company around you. And if you knew what everyone did, and you could kind of put your hand up and said, I need some help, or you need to do this, and shit would get done. When you have 9,000 people at the head office and 90,000 employees across the country, you have no idea how stuff gets done. And it's amazing that actually anything does get done when you have that many people trying to do things or trying not to do things. So that was a real lesson of really kind of how the fuck to get stuff done. And my lesson on that was just do it and break stuff and then we'll see what happens. And then, as I said, it was just kind of fuck it, let's just go build cool shit. So I got a bunch of co-ops. So I started with 6 co-ops and 4 full-time people. All started on the same day. We all started to kind of figure out how to build some really, really cool shit and worry about, how we were going to integrate it back into the system and how to scale it and all that sort of stuff. We weren't worried about that. We were just like, build cool shit, solve problems, and figure it out. So I spent, 3.5 years doing that. I'm going to get to a specific story in a bit. But then I transitioned into this idea of corporate innovation and this idea of how to get many large organizations to kind of get around this path of working with startups and working into this organization. So CI here is corporate innovation. This is how to get big companies to do interesting things. And so I was kind of tasked to build an innovation ecosystem. And, so what the fuck is an innovation ecosystem? I mean, it doesn't mean anything. So what you're trying to do ultimately is to get big companies to speak startup and startup to speak big companies. And traditionally, they don't speak the same language. So trying to get these companies and systems and people to work together who think very differently and use different words for the same thing was really, really difficult. And then that kind of idea, like, what am I doing? How am I trying to influence, the largest bank in Canada, one of the largest, another financial institution? How was I working with one of the largest insurance companies in Canada, trying to actually help them think differently? And what I had done for 3.5 years at Canadian Tire about trying to move that organization forward, there was a lot of sort of beating my head against the ground and saying, what the fuck am I doing here? The other part that I did is I traveled a lot. It was a lot of where the fuck am I this week? So, and as you saw earlier, I got 3 young kids, and that was not always a wonderful lifestyle to run. But I remember one time through a 2-week trip, I ended up being I was in China. I guess it was a little longer than 2 weeks. It was in China for 10 days. I got home on a Thursday. And flew out. Got home on a Thursday, had knee surgery on Friday, flew out to Kingston, Jamaica on Sunday to do 2 days of workshops in Kingston for the economic development of Kingston, Jamaica, which Jamaica sounds interesting, but downtown Kingston is different than the beaches. And then came home and then flew out to Regina the very next day, all of which on crutches. So I was in China, Kingston, Jamaica, and Regina all in about 2 weeks. I had no idea what time zone I was in and what I was saying. But it was an interesting part of life when you start to travel and speak and do that stuff. And then finally, it was trying to be super smart, which I'm not very good at. So I just said, fuck it, just go and help people build cool shit. That's what started me at Canadian Tire was, you got to start building stuff because if you try to think too much and you try to talk too much, that ends up not going in the right direction. So you really just have to build stuff. And that was one of the sort of the big lessons of what big corporations do is they talk a lot and they draw lots of pictures and diagrams and PowerPoint slides, but they don't actually go build stuff. And that is one lesson that got out of that is just go build cool shit that people love and it'll make it through. I mean, because if you build stuff that customers love or your internal stakeholders love, people will adopt it no matter how hard it is. Okay. So let's get into this. This is one of my favorite quotes from Andy Grove. Andy Grove was chairman, founder of Intel, one of the most influential people in Silicon Valley. And I truly believe that the folks that are most paranoid are the ones that will survive the longest. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of story, and this is my fuck up about specifically when I was at Canadian Tire. So this slide's going to stay on here for a little while. So one of the things that we built at Canadian Tire, which was really cool, was this automatic foot sizer. And it was this idea that the problem to be solved was that on a Saturday morning, you would go and you would try to wait for at a Sport Check or at a Canadian Tire to get running shoes. And there was one or two people running around, and you had to stand and say, okay, I want this shoe. Do you have it in a size 10 or a size 8 or whatever? And I want this color. And so he goes away. 5 minutes later, she comes back and she says, well, I got it in this color, but not that size. And so 20 minutes later, you still don't have the right shoe. And you knew exactly what shoe you want. You knew what size you want. You didn't need your foot measured. You kind of just knew. So we thought that was a pretty interesting problem to solve. And so we went out and kind of did some creative things about building it. I'll show you a picture at the end here. And one of the things it did is it really caught the attention of our CEO. Our CEO was pretty tech savvy. He liked it. He wanted to be cool and he loved it. And so as we built this, he somehow got wind of what we were doing, and as he said, fell in love with it. He had every board member of Canadian Tire. He had every one of his direct reports. So all the C-level folks at Canadian Tire and Sport Check and the band step on this thing as it was in his office, because he had to have his own personal one in his office. We also end up naming it after him at the time because he loved it so much. And then what happened was it became so important to him that our general counsel, our legal team at Canadian Tire, had to stand up and take notice and say, okay, we can't put his name on this thing if we don't know enough about it. Like, it's so important to him. He cares so much about it. We can't have his name on it, or we need to figure this stuff out. So all of a sudden, the big Borg of legal at a big, large company got involved. And then, so what happens is when you're really important at the beginning, and the company loves, or the person, the CEO loves what you're doing, you become really important, and you get invited to meetings you shouldn't be, and you get invited to conferences where you shouldn't be, and you get to talk to people that generally have influence, and it was really fun. But when you realize very quickly that two things happen. One is the CEO is more important than anything else, and his protection and the risk management of that is super important. And number two, legal wins everything. So if you're ever in a battle with the legal department inside a large organization, my guess is that you're going to lose, because I certainly did, because I became not very important very quickly, because the legal department determined that this was too big of a risk, and there was a couple of patents that were kind of close to this thing. And so they canned it. They shut this whole thing down after we had spent months and lots of money and really had some really interesting traction around this. And they shut it down because of this chance that it wouldn't work. And because the CEO's name was tied to it so closely, it had to work. It had to be perfect. It had to be a huge success. So instead of risking this idea of, hey, what it could be great, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it could have been great, they shut it down. And so there was a bunch of lessons that I learned through that story. And that was about sort of 8 months to a year of work that our team had put in. We had done some other things that were really, really cool as well, but that was the one that was really a lesson for me. So when you don't become important, when you were really important, you really quickly realize that you're going to lose your job or become irrelevant. And that's ultimately how I ended, is that we all decided that if that was the way things were going to run here, that I didn't want to be part of it, and they didn't really want me part of it because I wasn't going to change. So here's a little picture of, I guess it's at the end here. Sorry. So here's a couple of what the fuck's lessons for you to learn. Number one is your CEO should not be your product manager. As a startup and you've got 4 people, your CEO should be your product manager. If you've got 90,000 employees and you're a $16 billion company, your CEO has more important things to do than think about this little product that we had to size people's feet automatically and build it into kind of a cool little product. So that ended up really ultimately ended my career. And the reason why that happened was that as soon as the CEO became that important to the CEO, then all of a sudden his direct reports, it became very important. And before that, it was the CTOs. It was my boss's kind of little incubator that he could kind of play with and push stuff down. But when the CEO cares about it, well, guess what? The COO cares about it. The CFO cares about it. The general counsel cares about it. And the CMO cares about it, and the president of each one of the organizations cares about it, and they all want to come see it, and they all want a piece of it, because all of a sudden it's really, really cool. and they all want to be part of it, and you kind of get smothered with kindness. So what ended up happening is that my CTO kind of put a couple of really technical people in place to kind of protect it, to keep it his, and it ended up dying, and it ended up sort of pushing me out. But it was that the lesson here is, at that stage and scale, your CTO or your CEO cannot be your product manager, because ultimately he or she is way too important to be running these little products at that stage. So this is a picture of what it was. You stood in this thing, and it dynamically created your shoe size with your width and your arch, and it recommended a specific shoe for you. Thought it was very cool. It does not exist. It never existed, but it did for a bit. So another lesson that I learned that really resonates here is, you need to seek discomfort, even if it increases your chances of fucking up. So we needed to push this. We needed to take that risk. And as a large organization, it was not going to happen. And so they do not seek discomfort. They do not care about that. They may talk about that, but ultimately their job is to mitigate risk. On a personal note, this is where also that I love to be able to take discomfort. So most people don't know me around here, but I'm about 6'2" and 170 pounds, 75 pounds soaking wet. I'm a guy, if you talk about fight or flight, I'm a flight guy. I like to run. I don't like to fight. But there was an opportunity to dive into a neat little charity event a couple of years ago, which was boxing. Where'd it go here? There it is, boxing for charity. So I'm not an aggressive guy. I'm not a fighter. But I signed up for this, and it was totally out of my comfort zone. For 4 months, I trained to hit people and to get hit and to be okay with that. But it was totally out of my comfort zone, and I'll never forget that feeling, because at the end of the day, I won. And to me, I retired as an undefeated amateur boxer and never to go again. But getting out of my comfort zone was one of those things that, if I didn't take the risk of getting fucked up, if I didn't get to take the risk of getting punched in the face on a regular basis, I would not have that photo to share. And I'm actually pretty proud of that one. That's a good one to share. So don't be afraid to seek discomfort. Number 3, this one's so out of date, but I just laughed, so I kept it in. So this presentation was written. I was signed up to do a Fuck Ups Waterloo, and it was one of the first cancellations in March as we got into the pandemic. So my line on this is, your kids think you're great for a very short period of time. Be home when they think you're great. You guys are in school, and it's not this stage of your life, but this is a really interesting phase for those as you get to a point, and you're going to get pulled between work and family and other things. Your kids think you're a hero for a very short period of time. And I was traveling a lot for a while. I'm not now, no one is. So this is clearly a silly statement, but I left it in just because it's kind of funny. Because everyone's home these days. But I always think about this, is our kids think you're heroes, between the ages of kind of like 5 and 10 or 11 or 12, your kids generally think you're pretty cool. It gets to a point where before that you're useful, and after that you're useless, but in the middle of it, you're kind of a hero. So if you have an opportunity at some point to have kids, you'd be part of a family, be home during that time, because it really sets an example for your children sort of moving forward. So it may not be the best audience in here, but I think it's a life lesson that hopefully someone will remember at some point in their life moving forward. And then last thing is you got to be dumb to get smarter. And so one of the fuck ups that I have done is really early on in my career is not take the risk of trying to get smarter every day. And so what are the things that you're willing to be dumb at now to ultimately get smarter for? And I think that's something that you should have as a goal for your entire life. And too many people just fuck that opportunity up, where they just get comfortable. And there's a fine line between a groove and a rut, and most people are in a rut. And so get out of that, get uncomfortable, try new things, get hit in the face, realize that doesn't feel good. So get smarter so you don't get hit in the face as much. Learn from your mistakes of your CEO being your product manager, or, de-risking every opportunity. Just enjoy that process of getting smarter every day. You guys are students, you get that, but later in your career, there will be an opportunity to be dumb or at least be stagnant, and don't take that opportunity. Don't fuck up that opportunity. So that's it for me. I hope I'm on time. And I hope everyone has a few questions to ask. I've really enjoyed sort of chatting with you guys, and well, it's been a one-way conversation, but I hope we get a few Q&As here. So thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. That was really awesome. I'm not in tech, I'm not in business, but I got to say that automatic shoe measuring thing was so much cooler than I ever imagined.
Yeah, it was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, that needs to be in the next Star Wars movie. What the heck was that? I missed that. It was never to be. But we do have a question from Jeff, who is also intrigued by this story. He said, with the limited number of employees, how common is the leader wanting to be the product manager in tech?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in tech, the CEO is often the product person, or maybe the CTO becomes the product person. But one of the founders is definitely kind of leading the product. And at some point, that job changes, and they have to take more of a leadership position and not a product position. And that's probably pretty late, because the product is really, really important for the first number of years of a company's life. And it really becomes to a part where if the product starts to stand on itself and the CEO can't keep up with her knowledge of what the next features are, what the customers, if she's not close to the customer anymore, or not very close because she's too busy running investments and leading her team, then that's the time to step away and ensure that you don't lead the product. And that's often hard for a CEO to do, because she has been born and bred in that product. She loves that product, and she has driven that product to success. And the reason why the company is at that point there is because of her and the drive that she has. But at some point, and it's a very difficult one, and it's usually it's going to be at that part where the CEO can't talk to enough customers, can't understand the roadmap, and really is too far away from the people using the product to be able to kind of step into it and be part of it. So that's how I would answer that question.
Awesome.
That's a great answer to that question.
Yeah. Ben, you want to grab the next one? Yeah.
Sure. There's another one also from Jeff. He says,
Jeff's curious.
What are some of the challenges and potential fuck-ups in Canada's largest companies?
So abdicating responsibility is the biggest fuck-up in large companies. No one wants to take responsibility because they think of the downside, not the upside. People in startups, or people, I don't say just startups and not in tech, often are optimistic beyond belief. So they take the upside of that. And in largest companies, they go against. Their job is to not fuck up, not take the risk, and instead of try to win, they try not to lose. And if I can see a company that is led by a leader who wants to win and has direct reports under them that want to win and don't care about losing because they want to win, then that company's going to grow. And I think of Shopify is a great example of Toby and Lauren and Harley, who just love to win. I mean, they do not care about losing individual battles because they're going to win the war. And that is Jeff Bezos. That has been so many of the big tech companies that have come around that says we just want to win. That's what happens. And then you see in Microsoft examples from a number of years where Ballmer was running it and they stopped winning and they just started trying not to lose. And then Satya comes in and says, no, fuck it, we're going to win. And it acquires GitHub, acquires Slack, like just does some really cool stuff, not Slack, but okay, they want to win again. And that's what you want. You want a leader who stands up and says, whatever the company size is, I want to win. And I don't care about losing because you can't win if you don't take the risk of losing. So I would say that for anyone, whether you're taking a role, doing an interview, running a company, is don't try not to lose, just try to win, because that's how you build passion. That's how you build followers. That's how you build a great product. And I think passionate customers who want to throw their money at you, and which is all what we all want when we're building products.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. We have one more question from Ariman. So what is your personal recommendation for getting out of a rut?
Oh, great question. And for me, it is trying to stop doing something that's easy and then add something that's hard. So if I use my boxing example again, so for me, it's easy to go for bike rides and runs and swims or whatever else. And that's really easy. It was really hard for me to go decide to go get hit in the face. And I learned very quickly that I don't like that. So I learned defense also. But do something that's super uncomfortable, but you got to get rid of something that's easy. So I think that's the trade-off, whether that's work or whether that's personal. I think that my experience, and I think those of others, is that your personal ruts translate into your work ruts, and your work ruts translate into your personal ruts. And I think you can reverse that too, is say your personal excitement and stuff can translate to a motivation at work. And so I'm a big fan of, if you're too comfortable in a job, either change the job inside the company or leave the company, because it's just not going to get better. And I'm fortunate right now that I'm in a great spot. But I've been in bad spots before, and it's great. It's great to sort of feel invigorated by sort of standing up and saying, this is not great for me. So, but I do believe there's a translation between doing something exciting, but the important part of that is you got to get rid of something that's boring. So choose to get rid of something that's boring to add that. And that's the hardest part. People are really bad at stopping to do things. Stop doing things. They're good at adding things, but they're really bad at stopping things. So if you stop something that sucks and add something that's really hard, that often gets you out of a rut.
That's really great advice. Do you have time for one more question, Craig? Do you have?
I do.
Yeah,
we do. Okay.
Great. There was one more that popped in from Alexander. He said the day you got the news that legal was shutting down the project, how did you deal with the feelings you must have had? You must have been having.
That's a great question. And it wasn't one of those ones where it was a kind of an axe falling or a guillotine falling. It was kind of a slow, steady trickle that you knew the guillotine was coming, but it was taking weeks and months to fall down. So you started to hear things, and then you lost contact with a few people, and then legal wouldn't get back to you, and you ask questions and there's silence. So it was more of a death by 1,000 cuts versus sort of a guillotine that came down. There's no regret. I rarely have regret for things that I do, because the context of the timing and the thing was right at that time. And that extends to a lot of parts of my life. But I think that when I look back at it, at that time, it was certainly frustration, because we put a ton of time and effort and passion into that project. But I think the feelings really was just a missed opportunity. It was like, damn, we had something good. And it was just missed because of misaligned priorities, in my view. So that I wish that was the feeling of just like a missed opportunity. And if you've ever felt like that, that sticks with you for a long time. And looking at that picture again, I can still kind of feel that twinge of, damn, we were close. So that's how the feeling. So thanks, Alexander, for that question.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks one more time. That was Craig Haney. Thank you for joining us. So we're about to bring on our next speaker, but we have something to do first. Like we said at the beginning, we asked you guys to submit your fuck-ups for a prize from WUSA. So here is one of our awesome runner-ups. This is Kira's fuck-up. Kira says, last term, I completely forgot to write an assignment worth 30% in my school calendar and almost failed my class. I spoke with my professor and was able to make accommodations, but I still can't believe I dropped the ball like that. That's really rough, Kira. Thank you so much for sharing. So now we got our next speaker, Amanda Wood. So Amanda Wood works on the diversity and belonging team at Shopify, an e-commerce platform striving to create more entrepreneurs and economic independence for everyone. She's also the founder of a popular interview series, Ways We Work, and a certified professional coach. So she recently made the move to the country, and in her spare time, you can find her learning to grow flowers or outdoors with her pup Winston, which is adorable. Okay, Amanda Wood, everyone.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. Let me just get my screen going here. It's funny, the connections. If Craig's still watching, Lauren Paddleford is actually a friend and a mentor of mine. So I love the connections to Shopify and Waterloo here. Also, Kira, I have that dream of, it's a reoccurring nightmare for me of forgetting an assignment that was worth like 30% of my grade, and I'm not in school anymore. So just an aside there. All right, so yeah, a little bit about me. Obviously the intro did a great job of kind of explaining everything that I do. And the first thing I'll say is I generally have my hands in a lot of things. So if there's anyone out there who feels like me, who's a generalist, who's a little worried that they don't tend to specialize in any one thing, don't worry too much about that. There is a lot of really great opportunity out there for people like us. So you'll save yourself a lot of anguish and mental energy. So let's get into it. This lovely picture of me with purple hair is around 5 years ago, and I was standing in front of my desk at my very first job out of university. I'd been in the role for about a year at this point. Some of you might be familiar with the charcoal group in town, so I worked for them doing marketing, community development, and building the online presence of their brands, Beer Town, the Bower Kitchen, and their other restaurants as well. And so in my first job, I ran into learning to do a lot of things for the first time. The challenges of time management, having an impact in your role, managing relationships, stakeholders, all those things. I spent a lot of time at networking events, doing small talk, having these surface level conversations. And I found at these events, people are always talking about the things they were crushing, that they were just doing like so well at. And I really wanted to have honest conversations with people about what doing work you love really looks like. What's hard about your work? What makes it meaningful to you? What are the things you're failing at? What are the things you're learning? And those were the conversations I really wanted to have with people, and not these sort of surface level conversations. So that's how Ways We Work was born. And really, it was an interview series, just talking to different professionals about how they did their work, what challenges they faced, and then what they loved about it. And people loved the site. It really took off, I think, because people related. They found a little bit of solace in reading these really candid interviews from people they admired, either in the community or who they'd idolized online. And it started to become a bit of a bigger thing than I ever anticipated. It started as just a WordPress blog and eventually grew into this really big thing. And I really poured my heart into it. I custom designed the website. I started doing interviews over Skype versus just sending people questions over email. And I found I really enjoyed talking to people and interviewing them and just the whole process of that. And then someone actually added the site to Product Hunt. I have no idea who did it or why they did, but I'm very grateful because it was added to Product Hunt and was upvoted over 600 times. And that weekend, the site saw more traffic in a single day than it would normally have in an entire month. So that gave us a lot of opportunity. There was a lot of people reading. There's a lot of people interested in being interviewed. And then suddenly thousands of people per month all over the world were reading the interviews. And around this time, I actually made a bit of a career pivot myself and moved into doing front-end development full-time for a local agency. Around the same time, my friend Matt, who's pictured here, reached out and had the idea that we could grow the site to include profiles on teams as well as individuals. So how did teams do really great work together? A lot of the times it's not just individuals, but it's actually people coming together to create something really awesome. So he was a designer, a developer, and a really talented photographer. So it was an awesome partnership, and we really took the site to the next level. Around the same time, I actually got fired. It turns out I loved working with people way too much to be good at sitting and writing code all day. And my heart was really so focused on ways we work. We were starting to get a lot of attention, and I was starting to think of ways that we could really build and monetize the site. So the upside to getting fired is that Matt had actually just got confirmation from a design team at Facebook, and they were open to letting us come to Silicon Valley and shadow their team for an entire day. I had no job anymore, so I was free to go, and it sort of felt like the stars were aligning. I was like, here's this big chance we get to go to Facebook. We're going to do a bunch of other companies while we were in the Valley, and it was just this super cool opportunity that I never could have imagined. So we had the chance to shadow the search design team at Facebook in California. We sat in on a few design sprint meetings and interviewed a few key members of the team. And our readers really loved these team pieces, and our readership continued to grow. But as the site grew, my bank account was shrinking, and I had to start to seriously think about how the site could make enough money to fund these trips and to pay myself even a portion of a salary. So we tried everything. We emailed around to companies who might sponsor the site, and a few did, but our numbers weren't really high enough to pay for click-throughs on our homepage. The content was really what was interesting to people. So we tried a job board as well, because we were so career focused, and that had some minor success, but honestly took a lot more energy to execute than it was worth. And then we tried sponsored content. So this would be where a company would actually pay for us to come in and feature their team. And in hindsight, I think this really, speaking of missed opportunities, I think this could have really been our bread and butter. But both Matt and I felt a little weird about it. It felt kind of less honest if a company could pay and edit the piece, when truly even the unpaid interviews and features, we were letting people edit and see as a courtesy. So it was almost as if we were afraid of making money from this work, which is what we desperately needed to do. So we really dabbled in all three of these areas: job boards, sponsored content, trying to get sponsors for the site. And we had some success, but it was always just enough money to really put back into the site and not really to pay myself or Matt. And so I was growing increasingly stressed about finances. I was spending all my time on things that could make the site money. And I really started to hate everything that I was spending my time on. The interviews and connecting with people across the world about what the work that they found meaningful was really what I was passionate about. And so I was burning out. I no longer even enjoyed the parts that I used to love. I started getting obsessed with the numbers on the site. Everything I did was trying to figure out how to grow it, how to make money, while simultaneously not being sure if that's even what I really wanted from it. And so while these team visits look super glamorous and exciting, they were maybe like 3% of where my time was spent, whereas the rest of my self-employment looked more like this, which maybe is a bit familiar to everyone. It's kind of what my days look like now, to be honest. But not only was I broke, I was actually in a significant amount of debt at this point, and I woke up every day feeling the weight of that. I was caught in this loop that just sort of made my burnout increasingly worse. Our sources of revenue weren't good enough, and the ones that could have been, I kept really flip-flopping on if I even wanted to do them. And so I really hit this point where not only did I not love ways we work anymore, but I hated it. I woke up every morning miserable. I would just sit down at my home desk exhausted, even though I'd just woken up. And even if some incredible spark of inspiration or form of revenue had come along, I had zero energy and motivation to execute on it. And then the light at the end of the tunnel. So we'd been working with a design tool company. Maybe you'll be familiar with them. They're called Envision, and they had actually sponsored us a few times and shared our content with their audience. So one day they reached out indicating that they were interested in acquiring us. And for me, I was like, this is it. This is the golden ticket. I sat there in my home office thinking, like, this is what they mean by the hustle. Like, this is what all this struggling and effort has been for. It's all been leading up to this opportunity. And so Envision was going to acquire us. We were going to make a boatload of money, and everything was going to be okay. So mentally and emotionally, I really poured everything into this deal happening. My mental state was quite literally hinging on its success at this point. And then it didn't happen. So we had an hour-long call with the CEO and a few others, and it just didn't end up being a fit. So at that point, I completely crumbled. I was about $20,000 in debt. I was mentally and emotionally exhausted, and our last-ditch effort to make this thing work had evaporated in a single email. And so it's really easy to look back now and see all of the things that we could have done to make money, and all of the missed opportunity now that I have that space. It's been a few years since then. But when you're in that mental state that I had let myself get to, it often takes a really drastic change to snap you out of it. But more importantly, was the realization that that's not why I wanted to do it. And so I wrote this Medium post shortly after making the decision that it was time to get a real job again. And I shared this quote written by one of my favorite writers, Jamie Barron. She says, "The shadow side of doing what you love is that suddenly the thing you love now has to make money for you. And money plus love is not always a symbiotic relationship. For example, to turn a creative hobby into a capitalistic venture is to take away, at least in part, a purity of the experience of that hobby. And there's a shift that happens when your passion no longer is a thing you do in your free time, but is a thing you do in order to allow yourself free time." And so that really resonated with me. I'd become completely disconnected from what I loved about doing Ways We Work in the first place, which was tweets like these and emails from people saying how much they loved and appreciated what we were creating. I could get a beautiful email from a single reader about how much they loved the site or how much an interview had touched them. But again, the state I was in, if the readership hadn't gone up that week, I would totally disregard how incredible getting a message like that was. And so I want to be clear, the fuck up from my story was not losing my job. It wasn't that I couldn't figure out how to make money from Ways We Work. And it wasn't even that the acquisition from Envision failed. I think the four main things that I really took away from this and that I want to share with you is, one, to get really clear on what you want and what you value. Because in any endeavor you take on, there's always going to be a million different ideas that you could pursue, and people will give you endless advice. But if you don't define what success means for yourself, you'll end up going with the flow or going wherever something takes you. And it's not necessarily where you want to end up or what's going to make you happy. So being really clear about what you want. And then run towards things, not away from them. I became an entrepreneur because I was fired, and not because I chose that for myself and because it felt like the right time for me. So I think, as much as I don't regret anything, and I would definitely do it all over again, making sure that you're moving towards things and not necessarily because it happens to be the only choice you have, or that you're running away from something. And the third one is that working harder is rarely the answer. Hustle without intention is honestly like running on the spot. So putting in the hours and the effort is important, but not if you don't have a clear idea of where you want to go. And it just leads to burnout. So for me, this really reminds me of work smarter, not harder. Really have a clear idea of where you want to go, have a couple of goals you're working towards, and then put the effort in. But just the sort of endless attempts at like making money, at trying to do different things, was not what worked, and I don't think that ever works. And the last one is, don't be afraid of money. This is something I've had to do a lot of work around. I went to school for art, so I have a lot of strange feelings around money and creativity and creative hobbies. So don't be afraid of money. Money is what allows you to keep creating. If your goal is helping people or creating value, you can't do it without money. So don't be afraid of that, and don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth and what your work is worth. So if you take anything from my story, I hope it's how important it is to define what you truly value in anything that you take on, to do things with intention, and that having a work-life balance and taking care of yourself throughout that is not a nice to have. It's definitely a necessity. So that is all for me, and I'm happy to take any questions from here.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was great. I thought that the not being afraid of money is so funny to me. I think I should learn from that as a stand-up comedian / religious studies major. I think maybe
I'm still working on it. It's always there.
Yeah, fair enough. Does anyone in the comments have any questions for Amanda? Feel free to write them in. If not, we have a couple, I think. Renee, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I just love the ways we work, the interview series. I had a question about it. Do you have a favorite or memorable person or story that you've got to know through doing that series?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry that puts you on the spot.
So many to choose from. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of an individual. Honestly, it's hard to pick one person. I think it was one of the moments I actually remember that was is standing out to me now is Jessica Hish. She's a really famous illustrator based on the West Coast, and she just had such a huge following online. And so she was one of those ones where I reached out over email and I was like, there's no way she is going to make time for me. She's like interviewing with massive magazines, like, you know, who am I to her? And she said yes. And we had a really great conversation. And it was moments like that where I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Like, I can do this. So she's someone who stands out. And then I think the team at Spotify was actually one of my favorite team sessions that we did. They were just so like welcoming and were awesome, and they have like a really incredible process for how they design products there. So that was one of my favorites as well.
Awesome. There was another one in the comments from Kira. She says, how did you get clear on your personal vision of success and tune out the noise?
Oh man, I wish I could say I'm there. Well, what happened, I think, after Ways We Work sort of, I won't say failed, because I actually learned a lot. And one of the reasons I was so grateful for it afterwards is I wrote a huge long Medium post on like, hey, this didn't work and here's why it didn't work, and now I need a job. And because of that Medium post and because of the network I had built through the website, I actually did like 17 interviews for different jobs across like the next couple of weeks, and obviously landed at Shopify. So that's my one thing, is that like failures are often not failures. And then in terms of getting clear on vision, I would say that's sort of more of a practice than like a place you end up. So for me right now, I am actually trying to become a flower farmer and make a business out of that. So selling subscriptions and growing flowers in the spring out here on our property. And knowing that this is my first year and wanting to be successful, I'm just getting really clear on like, okay, what are 3 things I want to accomplish this year, and why am I doing this? And some of my reasons are I want to be closer to nature. So growing flowers is a way to do that. I want to have a way to connect with my community. So sharing flowers and selling flowers to my community is another way to do that. And then I want to learn what it takes to run a business that actually has a pretty clear business model, whereas Ways We Work didn't have that. So those are my 3 things. And if I get to do those 3 things, then it's been a success. And so it's just taking the time up front to really define that.
Awesome. So Amanda, it looks like we have one more question. It's from Jeff. And Jess says, thanks for sharing the emotional side of things. How has that changed how you approach your current projects, and what do you do to keep your balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I would say is a trap that I get caught in a lot is wanting to have everything figured out from the beginning and wanting things to be perfect from the beginning. And so it's just being easy on yourself. Like, something I've learned through working out is like no one would ever expect to go to the gym and lift like 100 pounds in a squat on the first day. You're going to start with a barbell, or you're going to start with like a couple of hand weights. And we're totally fine with that as humans. We're like, yeah, of course I can't do this insane physical thing right away. But we put this pressure on ourselves in other areas of our lives to do things perfect the right time, or take on like a huge endeavor and do it all at once. And so I would say what I do now is I'm like, okay, what's the first step I could take, and just let myself do that first step and learn from it and keep building on top of it. And so approaching things with like a little bit more ease and being a little bit kinder to myself has been the way that I don't put so much pressure on myself now.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here and sharing with us. We hope to hear from you again. Before we get to our last speaker, I wanted to share one more fuck up, if that's all right. This one is from Iris, and then it's another runner-up, and then we'll have the winning fuck up at the end after our last speaker. Iris wrote in that her biggest mistake in life was choosing a major without in-depth research and listening to people who didn't believe in her. She came to Canada when she was 17 years old as an international student living with her aunt. And then her aunt, she had offers to go to UW for math or AFM, and was excited to challenge herself by taking math, but was pressured into choosing AFM by her aunt. How she shouldn't have realized later that she shouldn't have listened to someone who didn't believe in her abilities, and is excited to say that now she's successfully transitioned into tech and is believing in herself more. So that's a great fuck up and a great story from Iris. Now I'm excited to introduce our last speaker of the night. We're excited for him to be here. His name is Arnold Yescas. As far back as he could remember, he's been dreaming of being a chef. And over the years, he took the next steps towards formal education, getting chef training through the Adult Learning Center at St. Louis. He's now the founder of the Underground Flavor Group, a collaborative culinary movement and pop-up lounge in Kitchener. And he's looking forward to sharing his fuck-up story with us. And we're looking forward to hearing it from him. Arnold Yescas, everybody.
Amazing. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm super happy to be here chatting with everybody. As you heard in my introduction, of course, I am in the culinary field. I have been in my entire life, but maybe I'll kind of jump into that slowly and how I got into that from the beginning. So myself, I was born in Nicaragua. I came here at the age of 6, so I was very young, pretty much grew up here in Kitchener-Waterloo my entire life. And I really just jumped right into the culinary field right when I was 15. I was a dishwasher at the Krabby Joe's up in Waterloo, and right away I fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, I want to be a chef. I'm flipping chicken wings, Caesar salads. It was a dream come true for me at the time. Little did I know the kind of industry that I actually really jumped into. So I'm sure we all know somebody, a family or friend who's in this industry, and you've all probably heard the crazy stories that go on here, or you see it on the crazy TV shows or the movies. Some of it's a bit over dramatic, but a lot of it does have actual real logistics, I guess I will say. So I jumped into the kitchen when I was 15. I worked my way up. I did my co-op. As you heard at the beginning, I did my chef training program at the St. Louis Adult Learning Center down here in Kitchener. And then I also went to London, Ontario to finish my apprenticeship at Fanshawe College. So I jumped into it very young. I grew very quick into this industry, and then I devoted my whole entire life into it. So I guess my major fuck up is what I like to say. What I always tell people was the self-investment was the least of my priorities. So I pretty much put everything I had into the job that I had at the time. And at times I didn't start thinking about myself. So in this restaurant industry, it's very quick and easy to get lost and to get trapped into the culture here. And for those who aren't really familiar, the culture in the restaurant industry is sometimes not the brightest or the healthiest for the human body. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of drinking, lots of drugs. There's just a culture that people very easily get trapped into here. I don't know why it's like that, but it is. And you can pretty much ask anybody in the restaurant industry who, if they've experienced anything like that, I'm sure that they have a story. So me, myself, I got trapped into it very quick. I worked my way up. I worked every single day, morning till night. And so I got pretty deep into that. So growing up in the restaurant industry, my entire goal was to be a chef and to own a restaurant one day and to kind of have that golden picture perfect restaurant. But of course, it's never actually that easy. So my fuck up was I kind of started forgetting about myself, and I committed everything that I could into this restaurant industry to get into that position that I was aiming for. So I guess I started kind of losing myself a little bit, and I was losing a lot of sleep. I was doing too much investment to the restaurants, forgetting about myself, my health. After a 13-hour shift, me and everybody would just get off work and just have a night, if you know what I'm saying. And then it just kind of gets worse and worse and worse. And I've worked with chefs or cooks who have been in this industry for 40 years, and a lot of that has changed. Or sorry, not a lot of that has changed, and they're still doing the same thing. So I launched Underground Flavor Group. And for those who are wondering what that is, Underground Flavor Group is a collective of chefs. During my time when I was a sous chef at Del's Enoteca, which is a part of the Charcoal Group up in Fairview in Kitchener, I was a sous chef there. And one of my favorite things was when a private client would book us out, and then they would request a tasting menu, which is just a surprise tasting menu. So they would have no idea what the menu is. They just paid their price, and then they would receive a 4-course menu of whatever the chef wanted to cook. I like that because it kind of brought us out of our comfort zones that were put in a restaurant to kind of express our culinary creativity and that freedom, and to be able to showcase who we actually are as a chef. See, I like to compare chefs to artists a lot, because the way that we present the food, it's a lot to actually like painting a picture, right? So we use the plate as our canvas, and then we use knives and hot pans as our paintbrush, and that's how we kind of express our artistic freedom onto a plate. So that was always my favorite thing when we got to able to do those. So I kind of want to continue capturing that, because in the restaurant, and again, like if you know anybody, I guarantee they can agree with me, there's not a lot of freedom. You are either cooking someone else's menu, you are trapped. You have to try to cook what you think the clientele wants, and it's not a good position to put yourself in as a career. You can't tell an artist what they can paint, or you can't restrict an artist like on their paintings. You can't tell them what they can and cannot do. So you shouldn't be able to do the same thing for a chef. So those were always the best things when we were able to do those dinners, because we got to express that. So I want to find a way to continue capturing that same feeling. So with Underground Flavor Group is more of a collective more than it is anything else, and it's more of a movement. So what we do exactly is we scout chefs from across Ontario, and we build a profile and a platform around those chefs. And we put them on our website, and we build a description about them, a profile photo, their cuisines, their expertise, everything about them, personable and professional. And then this way they can either get booked by a client to be a private chef in their home, or they can get hired for an event, or kind of just have that freedom of creativity to express their food through that website as they get to create their own menus that can get purchased. So we want to create that platform. And with those chefs, we also, prior to COVID, we also traveled through Ontario and did lots of pop-ups and create that culinary culture of these underground chefs who get to cook whatever the hell that they want to cook, because chefs are artists and they shouldn't have to be restricted in what they want to present. So that's exactly what we want to do. It's more of a movement. It's more of a large collaborative effort of these underground chefs who are trying to make a name for themselves and don't want to be restricted in the traditional restaurant culture. So that's the culture that we're building with us. It's the way I kind of design that is I have a big influence in underground hip hop. So when I think of underground, I think of like grimy, like New York City streets of the underground rappers who aren't doing what the record labels are telling them to do. They can say whatever they want to say. They can swear, curse, talk about whatever they want to do, and present themselves like that. So that's pretty much exactly what we're doing with these chefs. We're taking them out of that restaurant culture and giving them that freedom to be able to offer what they want. So when we have these chefs up on our platform, like I said, we travel across Ontario. We take over art galleries, what's it called, farmers markets, farms, pretty much any type of restaurant establishment. And we do usually one night events where these chefs get to do a takeover and completely design that restaurant exactly how they would like, by choosing the music, the menu, the decor, the theme, everything, you name it. So recently we moved into the UFG pop-up lounge, which is actually where I'm sitting right now. And even though it looks empty behind me because of the lockdown, this is exactly the culture that we are creating in this restaurant. So if you haven't heard of the restaurant yet, we have a changing menu on a daily basis where these chefs get to come in and offer exactly what they want to have. They get to showcase their culture, their culinary culture, and then their culinary artistic freedom, which every chef should have. We don't put a restriction on what the chef has to offer. As long as it's respectable and professional, we allow them to offer what they want. So it took many fuck ups to be able to get to that point where I really want to do that, because I got trapped in that restaurant culture, and I got trapped fighting for a position that really wasn't great for longevity, because I can name 8 out of 10 chefs who are my good friends who are not even in the restaurant industry anymore, who are possibly one of the best chefs in the city, because they couldn't get past that culture. You can't have families in it. You can't have a normal lifestyle. And that's exactly what I personally feel I got trapped, because I prioritized that more than what was really important in my life. I treated that job like it was like my actual life, I'll say. So I'm a single dad. I had my son when I was 19. He's 6 years old now. And there was a good amount of years where I was in the restaurant more than I saw him. And I was prioritizing that restaurant way, way, way too much, because I felt like in the long run, it was going to be worth it, which it never turned out to be worth it, because no matter how deep I went into it, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then I kind of just started falling into like a dark hole there. So instead of being at home with my son or with someone who I was in a relationship with, or my family, or even my own friends, I was just trapped in that restaurant culture where I would work from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. And then we felt like we needed to reward ourselves at the end of the shift. So that's where we would, open a couple drinks at the end of the night. The next thing you know, it's 5 a.m. and we have to get back into the restaurant again. So that's that culture that we were trying to defeat in the restaurant. But that's that culture that a lot of us get trapped into. And I know it's not just the restaurants that have that culture. There's lots of different industries out there that have the same issue, that it's so easy to fall into that. And that's something that we're really trying to defeat, regardless of whatever industry it's in. So I'd say with Underground Flavor Group, we are able to step away from that a little bit. We're not trying to restrict anybody. We're not trying to have anybody working those crazy days, and give people the absolute freedom to grow themselves, grow their brands, grow their names, and grow their businesses how they would like, have to be able to use our platform for that reason. And it's been a long journey, but it definitely is the fuck ups in the restaurant industry that brought us to that. So it gets definitely a lot more deeper than that. I don't want to just continue to blame the restaurant for the reason why we fall into those temptations, I say, but there's just that strong culture that I felt a very big victim to, and I needed to hit rock bottom. It came to the point where I was working 13 hours a day. I wasn't having sleepless nights. I wasn't seeing the people I love. I wasn't myself. I felt tired. I felt depressed. I went through lots of different types of alcoholism and drug addiction through those time periods. Nights of self-harm, nights of emotional harm, mental health problems that just is not good for anybody to ever to go through those type of things. So I know I'm not the only chef, or any professional for that matter, to, I guess, go through that. But I'm just happy that I was able to kind of step away from it once I hit rock bottom and try to create something new. So Underground Flavor Group was really hard to create, and it took also a lot more fuck ups to create something like that, because I don't come from a business background whatsoever. I never went to business school. The only college I went to with Fanshawe was for a chef apprenticeship. So in order to create that and to try to get that platform out there, took a good handful of fuck ups when it came to investments, money or financial control, how to hire the right people, putting trust in the right people, and kind of just where to put that business, because we really started off with no capital, no real investment, no real anything. It was just me solo, just trying to push this community platform that a lot of people didn't even really understand at first, through like Instagram and Facebook and social media. I really tried to utilize those social platforms to be able to do something like that. So that definitely took a lot of fuck ups to do that. But what I learned through the entire time is that when you have something good, you just gotta just keep pushing it, because the one interest that we always had was the chefs. The chefs were always interested in joining our platform because they were intrigued by the idea of being able to offer everything that they wanted to cook. People want to have that, to be able to express their culinary freedom. Like I said, like an artist, they want to be able to just cook what they want, enjoy, or let their customers enjoy their food, and kind of just be free. I know I keep saying that, but it's so important to feel free in this industry, because it's definitely easy to trap you. Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions here right now. That meals back experience. It's a fundamental challenge. It's in the shows, no dramatic. Yeah, so sorry, I was just reading the questions. I don't know if you wanted me to read them or if you're going to ask me them.
No worries. Whatever you want to do. Here, we can pull them up though if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Let's start with the first one from Jeff.
Yeah.
He says, I've seen the shows, and although dramatic, bad meals or bad experiences can kill a restaurant. Is that the fundamental challenge in the industry that causes the power and stress that you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? Because it's a very difficult industry in that case, because the consumer is obviously the most important person for that. And sometimes the consumer they're very, what's the right word? I'm not sure what the exact, I'm not trying to be rude here at the same time either, but there's some people out there who criticize things a little bit too hard, right? So rather than, like, say for example, like you get an app and you have a complaint, you can put in that complaint into that app and then it gets fixed and then that's it. But in the restaurant industry, if you get a dish that you don't like and then you put that onto the social media, or you put that as a review, or pretty much Yelp or anything out there, that can affect, because that negative review can put a bad taste in people who have never even stepped into your restaurant. So that is a very big stress factor in the restaurant, because you have to make sure that you're on top of every single thing. But the thing about that, if you try to impress every single person, you're going to end up ripping your hair out. So it's kind of a situation that no matter what position you put yourself in, you won't be able to beat that. Not everyone's going to be happy about it, but there's also some people who take it to a certain extent and try to damage the restaurant, which is also completely unfair, because we, like I said, we put 13, 14 hours into these types of businesses. So
awesome. We got another question from Jeff. He wants to know what challenges COVID is creating for restaurants specifically, and how are owners handling that?
Yeah, I mean, I can go on for like 3 hours about that, but I mean, it's definitely difficult just with the restrictions themselves. Like, you know what, like, we opened up our restaurant in the red zone when we were still in the red zone, and even though there was so many restrictions there, we were still able to function with that, because we were able to at least sit, this restaurant here probably sits about 110 people. We were able to sit 10 people, and we were able to function around that because we could rely on the sale of the food and the beverages and stuff like that, which is very big to keeping a restaurant going. Now, takeout is a whole different game. So the lockdown is definitely what changes everything and really screws with restaurants, especially some of the more fine dining restaurants that never really resorted to those things. So that is almost like I don't even know, like suicide to try to even get into that, because there's a restaurants like the fast food sandwiches places that are thriving from this, but to force a restaurant that has never been accustomed to doing takeout, like some of the best restaurants in the city, and to try to put them in that position is just killing them completely. And it's unfortunate how many restaurants we've seen shut down, but this is just, it's completely destroying restaurants. It's really unfortunate, but yeah, the lockdown really sucks.
Definitely. In relation to that, someone else asked, what's one moment that sticks out to you during COVID that reminds you how resilient our local chef community can be?
Yeah, you know what? And I'm not trying to say this like toot our own horn or anything like that, but like since we went into this entire pandemic, we've had a lot of chefs reach out to work with us, and they want to collaborate with other chefs. And I've seen a lot of restaurants also do collaborative events as well, or collaborative any type of experience, which is fantastic. But since we went into lockdown, we have grown our chef collective massively. Just today, I was even just talking to a couple of chefs that came in today because they were chatting with each other, and I overheard them, and they were finding ways to brainstorm with each other and how they can work with each other or collaborate to intrigue more people to getting takeout. Because it's super difficult waking up every day hoping to God that people are just assigned that they want to get takeout food today, especially 7 days a week, just hoping that people are going to do that. So the fact that the chef community is really stepping out and not being selfish about it in what way whatsoever, and try to collaborate and focus on it together and brainstorm on how everybody can win from this or get out of this, I guess is better to say. Because like I said, it's very unfortunate, and I feel like right now we're all just swimming against the wave. But I feel like if we kind of all somehow team up, which everybody has been, most of us will get through it for sure. So I think that is definitely it, is the selflessness of all the chefs through this entire pandemic, of everybody wanting to help each other and work with each other, because we have definitely gotten the shit end of the stick.
All right, thanks, Arnold. We had a really interesting question from Alexander. He said, what is on your hip hop list for when times get tough?
Okay. You know what? That's actually a good question. See, I'm a very, very big hip hop head. So there's many different artists I can resort to. Like, I like old school, new school for sure. But if this is an old school guy, he may think I'm crazy, but I'm a very big of Kendrick Lamar, and he is definitely my artist who I go to for like that spiritual comfort, I guess I'm gonna say, when I'm really pissed off and I want to kick something, and then I kind of just put that into my headphones, and then that definitely helps. So I'd say he's definitely at the top of that playlist there, for sure.
Awesome, that's great. And then one more quick one. Another one from Jeff. He asked, "What's your death row meal?"
Oh man, I don't know. That's a great question. I feel like that's a decision I would have to make if I'm ever at that point, which I hope I'm not. That'd be the greatest fuck up of all, I guess. Damn, Jeff. You know what? I'm from Nicaragua. I'm gonna say a good nacatamale, which is just a loaded Nicaraguan tamale. Is the I guess the dish of Nicaragua. It was Anthony Bourdain's favorite dish when he went down to Central America. It's just very hearty, delicious, and if I'm ever on death row, I guess I would like to eat a nacatamale for sure. Definitely. It's a funny question.
Okay, thank you so much, Arnold. That was really, really awesome. Arnold is our last speaker for tonight, so we're just about to let you guys go. But before we do, we have a final student fuck up. Is actually the winner of the student fuck ups, and it is Abby's fuck up. So here's what Abby says. She said, biggest fuck up of my degree so far. I was partners with someone for a lab that I wasn't super close with, which just makes this fuck up worse. We had just finished a pretty difficult lab that was worth about 15% of our grade, and it was my job to submit it. It had to be handed in within 10 minutes of the lab finishing. I got distracted and forgot, and the prof basically told us, sorry, but you get 0% on the lab. I tried to convince him to still give my partner the marks since it was my fault, but he refused. I felt so bad, basically ended up sabotaging my partner's mark and my own because I got distracted. I now double check everything I submit times 10. Still feel bad to this day, and safe to say they were never my lab partner again in later years. Abby.
Yikes.
You may have fucked up, but you also won because WUSA will be reaching out to you to give you your grand prize, which is a $50 gift card to the WUSA treasure box.
That is awesome. See, fuck ups are great. Yeah, it pays off.
Totally worth it.
Yeah. And that's the end of our event. We want to thank all our speakers, all of the students who tuned in on YouTube or are watching it later. We want to remind you to check out at Fuck Up Nights KW and at Your WUSA on Instagram to stay up to date on future Fuck Up Nights and events by our student association. Also, we wanted to remind you that we're in the middle of the Winter Welcome Week right now. So there's a lot of events this week, including Sex Toy Bingo tomorrow night with Kine from Canada's Drag Race. That's super cool. There's Take a Deal on Thursday night, so you can be part of a live game show. And on Friday, there is Lunch and Learn, dealing all about roommates during isolation. So make sure to check out at Your WUSA on Instagram for all of that. And we hope you have a great night and you enjoyed the Fuck Up Night here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.